Alright, so this is the coding walkthrough video for prototype 1.2. Now we've added a number of different features this week, as well as a few quality of life changes, and some much needed features to the game. So what I'll do first is just walk you through them in the game itself, and then go through the code, as I normally do. So as you can see, first of all, we changed the colour of Leo, just to make him a bit easier to see. Yeah, that's pretty much all that's been done there. And as you'll notice, the first major feature we've got is camera clipping. Well, glitchy camera clipping, but camera clipping all the same. So now the camera doesn't just go through the floor, it actually zooms in onto Leo and then zooms back out again when you move away. I'll go through how the code of that works in just a second. And if you look over here, come on, there you go. If we go over here, we've got our first NPC. If we go up to him, it comes up with a little text box, press enter, and he starts talking to you essentially. Press enter again to get rid of it, and then off we go. So yeah, we've got a very, very basic, but definitely effective dialogue system now. And the last thing that we've done in this update, come on, there we go, is frozen Leo as he leaves the ground. Because if you recall, in the last update we added a feature that, just land him, yeah, see there? He compensates for the hills. But the problem with that is if you went up here, he would start compensating for going up, so he would point upwards and point down, and it would be really, really hectic, and it would break a load of the mechanics. So to combat that, we basically frozen Leo whenever he goes up into the air. It's a bit of a quality of life thing, it just makes it a bit easier to control, makes it a bit smoother. So yeah, those are the main features of this prototype. And yeah, so now I'm just going to walk through the code. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the dialogue system. So it's actually not too complex. I came up with this on my own, really. And yeah, so what we've done first is added an actual text box, which is here. If we go to, where is it? 2D, and go to the HUD. Yeah, so we've put it on the HUD here. You can't actually see it, it's behind the hills. Yeah, it's behind there, but so it's a text box on the HUD, and with a background of the black rectangle, so that you can see it easier essentially. So that is that one there, and so it's called that, and we use Game Watch to find that essentially. This bit's pretty simple. And what we do on startup is disable it, so it doesn't appear on the HUD, it's disabled. And we also disable the black background, so you can't see it when the game first starts. And then we also disable the boolean that we've set up here. And then what we've got down here is when the player enters the on-trigger sphere collider of the NPC. If we go back to 3D and to the NPC, yeah, as you can see, he has got an on-trigger sphere collider all the way around him. So it basically gives off the illusion that when you get close to him, he starts talking to you, whereas actually it's just triggering when you get within his sphere collider. So yeah, when you get within the on-trigger, enable the text and enable the background. Enable the text box essentially. And this also disables when you get far enough away from him. But if you actually want to talk to him, so yeah, when you press the enter key, it changes the text from, I think it was hey you, yeah, to I have a mission for you. And then it also enables the boolean. And then up here we've got, if you press enter and the boolean is true, then disable the text. So this one, even though this one comes afterwards, this one has to be above, because otherwise, yeah, if this bit is below this, then it will check that second. So when you're pressing enter, it will check for it twice, and it will just skip right over the changing the text and go straight to that. So that one has to be above, so that it checks to see if the boolean is true first, before then doing that. And that is basically the dialogue system in a nutshell. So it'll get a lot more complicated as prototypes go on, but for now it's just proof of concept really. So the next change we did was the constraining Leo when he's flying about. We've got that here. Basically, if the player is colliding with a platform, i.e. the floor, then only freeze him on the rotations and positions that we wanted to before. So rotation on the z-axis to kind of compensate for the, all the previous rotations that we've frozen him on prior to this update. But if he leaves the platform, the floor, then freeze him on the x-axis and on the z as well, I believe, yeah, and on the z. So that basically completely freezes him, so he can't rotate at all when he's in the air. So it's a lot easier, essentially, to fly him around. And the last bit of code we did, this one's a bit more complicated, is the camera clipping. So this one involves ray cast. Basically what it does is casts a ray, if we go along here. Yeah, it casts a ray, because the camera will be behind the player during the actual game. It casts a ray between the camera and the player. And if anything comes between the ray, like a pillar or the floor or something, then the camera compensates for that by getting closer to the player until whatever it is that is between the player and the ray, between the player and the camera, is no longer between them. And that is achieved through this code here. So we calculate the cam direction, which is the position of the camera minus the position of the player. And then we shoot out our ray casts from the player to the camera and calculate the distance from the player to the camera. And essentially, if something comes between it, then it transforms the camera's position to whatever the offset is. Essentially, however close the object is, moves past the object, and so that the camera can still see the player, essentially. And what that means, if I just demonstrate again here, is the camera, so the camera sees the floor because it's getting in the way of the camera and moves to compensate. So it means there's no more camera clipping, essentially. So yeah, those are the big changes. What was the changes for this prototype? And yeah.